Thursday afternoon chat. Your favorite artists with Jayar.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, will you please put your paws together unless you're driving for my guest today, Jamie Kimmett. How are we?
I'm good.
All right, this is a first timer for us. I had the hardest time when we've been playing Prize Worth Fighting for a while. And so you're just getting to know an artist, and then you have to go look up, okay, this guy doesn't talk like us. And then, but I had the hardest time when I was talking about you coming in. I kept finding myself saying Jimmy Kimmel. Like Jamie Kimmett, Jimmy Kimmel.
You can call me Jimmy if you want. I really don't mind that much. It's the double M.
Yeah.
Kim. And like Jimmy. Yeah.
Jimmy,
I can
Kimmel,
I can just about forgive it. So you're all right.
You've got to get that every day though. I mean,
yes. Yeah, I get called Jimmy. It's a regular. I've just given up now.
Yeah.
I'm happy. Jamie, it's fine. James sometimes as well.
Yeah.
So
we've got new music to talk about next week. An EP or a full album? What's coming out for people to pick up?
So today I have my new single coming out, Burdens, and next week the EP's coming out, 6-song EP.
Let's, just so we can familiarize the audience with who you are in conjunction with what we've been playing from you already. Mm-hmm. We've not heard the story behind Prize Worth Fighting For. Would you mind walking us up that one, just DNA, and then I'll go into that.
Yeah, so Prize Worth Fighting For is a song that I began to write, I think about 3 years ago. And I've been a Christian for 10 years now, just over 10 years. And one of the things I quickly figured out is that being a Christian is hard. You know, it's not an easy thing. And so, but yet when I would go to church or in some of the communities I was in, not a lot of people were talking about suffering, talking about pain, talking about struggle. And sometimes we experience these things in life. It's very easy to lose your way. And so I wanted to encourage people that, first of all, suffering and pain is a normal part of Christianity, of being a Christian. And so the song really came out of a dark season of my life, but during that season, growing closer to God in the midst of all of that, and to know that we have a prize worth fighting for, that no matter what we're going through, we have a hope that's bigger than our circumstances, and that Jesus is worth that. You know, and there's various scriptures that encouraged me and helped me along the way as well. I should mention that I co-wrote the song with my best friend Lorna Farrow, and she recently became disabled 5 years ago, started using a wheelchair. So a lot of her struggle is really wrapped up in the lyrics as well, and so that's where the song came from.
Since this is the first time, let's approach this like you're at a Chick-fil-A job interview here.
I love Chick-fil-A.
You're wanting to come work at the fry, do the fries and everything.
Yes.
But to our audience, maybe who only knows the song we just played, how did you, maybe just a minute or two version of how you ended up in front of us today from a faith standpoint and then even a music standpoint?
Yes, so there's kind of two parts to the answer. So the first part of the answer is that 10 years ago, I graduated music school in Edinburgh. I put a couple songs on the internet and got a phone call from a management company in LA. They flew me out to Los Angeles. They paid for the flight, which is important if you're Scottish, someone else pays. We flew out to LA, and I wanted to try and make it in music. And a lot of opportunities came around. But one thing that kept happening was I kept hearing about Jesus. Everywhere I went, people were talking to me about the gospel, which is quite unusual for Los Angeles. And so eventually, long story short, I end up through a series of divine encounters and experiences, end up walking into a church, hear the gospel, and got saved. Gave my life to Christ completely unexpectedly. Wasn't interested in Christianity before that, but heard this man preach from the book of Genesis and said, this makes sense, God is real, and I need to know Christ. And so a week later was offered a record deal, a mainstream record deal, which God told me to turn down. So which had been my dream since I was 16, turned the deal down. And so I find myself back in Scotland and at Bible college. So I lived down in London a few years ago and was an assistant for a Baptist church. Was planning to go into ministry when God told me to go out to Nashville. I felt as though God was saying, go to Nashville. And so I flew out 2016 to Nashville and was offered a Christian record deal 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So that's the kind of, in a nutshell,
the
two parts of it.
I hear that story all the time. That's such the norm.
It's fairly typical,
that's every artist. Next. No, that is amazing. That is that's incredible. It gives, I didn't know that whole story at all. I knew you had gone to Bible culture. I didn't know about a lot of the people we play grow up in church and then they walk, drift and then they come back. Mm-hmm. But to be just blindsided by the gospel, I think is amazing.
Yes.
Like, where did that come from?
It was very unexpected. Yeah. Definitely.
That's great. I talk to the audience about this all the time, that I, for years, lived in the UK and Ireland, and it's very dark spiritually. And so it was kind of cool to see you come to America to find gospel and be able to.
I didn't know there were Christians in Scotland.
Yeah. And
so when I got saved, I was literally Googling Christian churches, because I grew up sort of nominal Catholic, and so I knew about the priests and everything, but I didn't think people were talking about Christianity or explaining it in a way that was relevant to life. And so it was all new to me, completely new.
Oh, that's amazing. We've talked a little bit about, Scotland and the church, Church of England, whatever you want to call it, even from my days, Church of Ireland.
Yeah.
It can be very, very dark. Darren of We Are Messengers will give you a whole hour-long rundown on just how difficult it is. I just wanted to get your perspective, because a lot of us in the Southeast will look at church as, there's one on every corner. I can kind of pick and choose. It's like choosing a nail salon or a hair salon.
I think it's like anything. I think that the good news is it is dark. It is dark, and there are major concerns theologically in terms of just the number of Christians seems to be becoming less and less. But the good news is there's always a remnant. God always has people. There's always a remnant of people who are following Jesus and who are trying to live out the Bible. And so I like to look at it that way and say, do you know what, there's some people who look at the Church of Scotland, for example, or the Church of England, and say, well, theologically there's been compromise. I'm giving up on that. I'm walking away from it. And there's a lot of people who have walked away. And, everyone's entitled to their convictions, but there's a lot of people who have stayed and who are fighting, because the national church, Scotland used to be known as the land of the book. I mean, go back to the Reformation, go back to the 16th century, talk about John Knox and some of these reformers that came, and Scotland was a place that sent missionaries all over the world. Right. But now we need missionaries to come to our land. And so I'm kind of out here in America with a bit of a heavy heart, there's a strong sense that God's called me here, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But the thing is, God has called me to be here. Yeah. And so I'm here for as long as he has me, but I do have a heart to go back and to bring the gospel to bear on my homeland and my home nation, for sure.
That's interesting. Because I didn't know who I was when I was, quote unquote, ministering in Ireland. I was a lost Christian kid that was searching for my traction. And then when I went back to Scotland a couple of years ago, I ended up in a church in Stirling, a lot of big battles you see in Braveheart there. And I went into this Church of England in Stirling, Scotland, and they were singing songs that I had sung 20 years before in Ireland, same songs. And the clientele, so to speak, was getting in their 60s and 70s. Yeah. I saw maybe 2 people under the age of 20 in the whole church. And it broke my heart to the point that when I came back to do a radio show, I almost felt like, am I just going back to my I want to stay there and pour out anything you've done in me. Yes. I feel like I want to go do that. It didn't make financial sense, and I didn't do it.
Yeah. One of the mottos that came out of the Reformation that I feel has perhaps been neglected is that to keep on reforming. We reform and we keep on reforming, because when religion becomes religion, it stagnates, and when it becomes disconnected from the generations that are currently living, we need to preach the gospel to that generation. And sometimes, we can be a bit guilty of tradition, and so that it doesn't appeal to a lot of people, and so I think that's why certain churches are not seeing growth the way that perhaps other sections of the church are, charismatic churches or different denominations that have seen a little bit of growth compared to some of the more traditional denominations that I've observed. But so that's a really good point. How do we reach this generation and not just have the same little huddle of people getting older together? You know?
Yeah. Gosh, we could talk all day about that, but let's move on to new music. Burdens, or as you'd say,
Burdens.
This will be on the EP that comes out next week from Jamie Kimmett. Can you just give us DNA, heart behind Burdens?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one of my favourite verses in the Bible is where Jesus just talks about those who are weary from life, or just weary, and says, "Come to me, all who are heavy with burdens, and I will give you rest." And one of the things that grabs me about that is just that Jesus says, "Come to me," and we come to Jesus, we become Christians, and then we forget to stay with him. You know, we go on living life, but it's as Christians. We need to hear that as well. I need to come and find rest, and to rest in Christ every single day. Otherwise, it's not long before I become weary and broken down by life. But so that's one sense of it. So I would want to sing that to the church and to people who are just weary from the Christian life, for sure. But then there's another sense in which, if you've never known Christ, if you need to find out about what Christianity is, then that's the place that you find your salvation. That's the place that you find freedom from sin, that you find healing, you find deliverance, and joy and hope. You know, certainly that's what's happened for me. And so there's kind of I would hope that it's a twofold message for people there.
Let me just hit, as somebody who grew up in Scotland, who was the coolest American in your mind as a young kid in Scotland that was just the coolest?
The coolest American? Well, I'm a huge fan. Two musicians that I'm a huge fan of, Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, really, really inspired me. And so I always had these are two American men who inspire me with their music. And the really cool thing is I got to see Stevie Wonder, that is, 5 years ago in Manchester.
Oh wow!
He played the Manchester Arena, and I just cried, I laughed, I danced. It was literally like the best concert I've ever been to in my life, I would say.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's we've been wrapping up all these interviews lately with a little segment we like to call Tickling the Ivories, where we brought a piano into the studio. And we recognize that some of the artists we play are piano players. Some have never touched a piano. And so we have no clue about Jamie Kimmett. So
Jimmy Kimmel, you don't know if he plays?
No, I don't know if Jamie Kimmel plays, Jamie Kimmett plays. So we basically set a clock for 30 seconds, and you give us whatever you give us in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Even if
I think I still know chopsticks.
Perfect.
I'm
this
just
will be great. So we've had some, you have like these amazing musicians come in. They're normally playing guitar when you hear them singing over the radio.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like Mozart.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out in a couple seconds here.
We'll
Let's walk over and mic ourselves up over the ivories. Since you're a Stevie Wonder fan, we should be in for something good, right?
Yeah.
This is Jamie Kimmett, Tickling the Ivories, 30 seconds. We never know if somebody can play this machine or not, but we find out real fast. So here we go, 30 seconds. I'm starting my clock, Jamie, whenever you're ready.
I just called to say I love you. I just called to say how much I care. Oh, I do. I just called to say I love you. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart.
And now it's Michael.
I'm gonna make a change for once in my life. It's gonna feel real good. It's gonna make a difference. Gonna make it right. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. Oh.
I moonwalked there. I don't know if you saw it.
I caught something out the side of my eye.
The piano was in the way, so you couldn't see, but that was a moonwalk. I just want to point that out.
God loves a trier.
Thank you. That's on my business card. Beautiful. Well done. So I guess you can play a wee bit, eh?
A wee bit. Here or there.
Good. It's very good. Stevie Wonder meets Michael Jackson and Jamie Kimmett. Tickling the Ivories.
The Thursday afternoon chat. Your favorite artists with Jayar.